Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, A Thorn in My Side. The man who rules the world takes on an agent from the CIA from the Black Boule in this action-packed all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' A Thorn in My Side at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. One of my viewers ponders what would it be like if Marvel Studios made a War Machine movie starring Terrence Howard. Now, what most people don't know is that Terrence Howard was actually the first person cast in about 2006 or so when they made the first Iron Man movie, and Terrence Howard was the first person cast to be Jim Rhodes, Tony Stark's best friend in the Iron Man movie, and was the first person to actually be paid as related to the overall film. And Terrence Howard was actually paid more than Robert Downey Jr. for the first Iron Man, and as a result of that film being a big hit, and it basically relaunching Robert Downey Jr.'s career, this is where the studios showed their racism, because instead of going out here and looking to support Terrence Howard, they basically asked Terrence Howard to take a pay cut, I believe, for the second Iron Man movie. And when Terrence Howard decided not to take that pay cut, that's when they decided to cut him out of the burgeoning Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that has a lot of comic fans basically wondering what would have been if Terrence Howard were allowed to continue playing Jim Rhodes instead of Don Cheadle. And a lot of people basically believe that if Terrence Howard had continued on playing Jim Rhodes, the possibilities of a War Machine spin-off movie would have been big, because Terrence Howard in and of himself was considered to be an A-list actor and a big draw himself, because Terrence Howard, again, was an Oscar-nominated actor for movies like Hustle and Flow, and was acclaimed for many performances, and he had, again, a draw as related to the audience, and this was one of the reasons why the studio basically went out here and courted Terrence Howard, because, again, at the time, superhero movies were not doing that great. Yeah, we had, before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we were coming off a really poor adaptation of Spider-Man 3 that didn't go over very well. We had the Hulk and Daredevil, so looking to court an A-list actor like Terrence Howard, that was something that was considered a thing as a success, because usually most actors didn't want to touch superhero movies after the disaster of Spider-Man 3 and the mediocre performances of Hulk and Daredevil. And outside of that, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was just starting out, so Terrence Howard basically got one of the worst deals as related to things with superhero movies. And as I look at it, Marvel Studios really missed out, because Terrence Howard was a much better actor than Don Cheadle, and he possibly could have shown his talent if he had gotten an opportunity to star in a War Machine movie. Now, the prospects of a War Machine movie were set up in the third act of the first Iron Man that came out in 2008. Now, as Tony Stark is putting the Mark I chess piece in his chest to power up the Mark III armor to take on Obadiah Stane, there's a scene where Terrence Howard's Jim Rhodes looks at the Mark II armor and says, "Next time, baby," because he wants to be backup, but there's only one arc reactor. And that's where we were getting the whole prospect of Terrence Howard being War Machine in a future movie, but sadly we never got that opportunity with other movies. No, from there on we got Don Cheadle in Iron Man 2, and we never really got a really good build to War Machine, because when it came down to the studios, we went from Paramount to Disney, but I believe a Paramount-run Iron Man would have led to Jim Rhodes putting on the armor, and basically this could have been done organically with the story. Now, as I see it, the way you could have built into a War Machine movie basically would be at the end of Avengers Endgame. Now, with the end of Avengers Endgame, we have Tony Stark dead, and with Tony Stark being being dead, he would basically go out here and with his will basically bequeath his company and his armors to Jim Rhodes. And as he bequeaths his armors to Jim Rhodes, this is where we go from the red and gold Iron Man to the black and silver War Machine, a black and silver War Machine armor that Tony Stark specifically designed for Jim Rhodes, and specifically designed for Jim Rhodes to continue carrying on the mantle of Iron Man. And this would be very similar to the scenes in the legendary Len Kamenetsky Kevin Hopgood Iron Man run, and as it would be very similar to that scene. And as we would see, we would get to see some depth with I believe this version of Jim Rhodes, because we would see again Jim Rhodes taking on the role of being a CEO. And as he takes on the role of being a CEO, it would be very similar to what I do in my novel The Temptation of John Haynes, where we have Jim Rhodes basically taking over for Tony Stark and trying to learn not only about the business of Stark Enterprises, but he's also looking to try to ward off a whole lot of enemies as related to our tech and technology, as related to them trying to steal Stark tech, or trying to find a way to sue to try to get control over the company, because you would have somebody out here buying up the stock like Roxxon Oil, and as they're trying to buy up the stock, and there's a war for control of the company, you would have a whole lot of different villains coming out as related to the Kamenetsky Hopgood run. You would have villains like, I would say, the Atom Smasher, or many of these other villains that were a part of the Kamenetsky Hopgood run, and those villains would be the ones that would take on War Machine, and as they would take on War Machine, this is where we would see how Jim Rhodes' whole approach to defending Stark Enterprises and defending the world is different from Tony Stark's. And we would get some really good corporate intrigue as related to things. I mean, there are a lot of elements here for some very good storytelling. You could introduce a femme fatale in Marcy Pearson, who was someone from the David Michelinie Bob Layton run, who was a love interest for Jim Rhodes. And you could go out here and make it where she was sort of like a femme fatale, who's basically, somebody who he thought he was cool with, but was actually spying, hoping to find a way to get access to the Stark tech, and looking to get access to the Stark tech. And you could build that up as related to the build up to a new villain, as related to the climax, like Firepower. I mean, there's a lot of ideas here that you could use to build into the first movie of this guy struggling as related to, again, learning about how to run a corporation, and learning how to what was valuable about the Iron Man technology, and why Iron Man is needed, and why Iron Man is important to the world. I mean, you could have a really great story about a guy trying to, again, take over the legacy of a hero. And it would be something the audience would have no problem with, because Jim Rhodes basically, again, did this 2 times in the comics. One time when Tony Stark was an alcoholic. This is where Jim Rhodes put the armor on because he understood the importance of Iron Man to the world. The second time was when Tony Stark was supposedly dead due to looking to be cryogenically frozen due to his nervous system being rebuilt. And he took over, and that's when he became the black and silver Iron Man. And basically, those stories showed how Jim was basically competent and capable of being the head of Stark Enterprises, and did a great job of running Stark Enterprises in his own unique way. I mean, there's a great story here building into Jim Rhodes, again, taking over the mantle of Stark Enterprises, and Terrence Howard would basically do a great job of this with his whole style of humor and just confidence at all. And it would make for some very compelling storytelling. Maybe you could get Halle Berry to be Marcy Pearson, or get one of these fine sisters again to be Marcy Pearson. and you could make a really great Iron Man, a great War Machine movie. I mean, I would basically just call it Iron Man: A New Beginning because that's basically what the Kaminsky Hopgood stories were. I mean, you could make a good movie with Terrence Howard with really good storytelling, and you could also use this to build into the Armor Wars movie that Disney wanted to do because maybe you could do it organically because you could have a company like Roxxon or Hammer looking to go out here and use Marcy Pearson to be the spy who basically, again, steals Tony's tech, and Jim Rhodes going on a quest to get that tech. You could do a great build up into Armor Wars, the project that basically is in limbo right now because with Armor Wars, the whole project has basically been buried, and I believe part of the reason why it's been buried is because of the racism that I believe is going on at Marvel Studios. Now, when it comes to Marvel Studios these days, they seem to have a problem with black heroes, especially black male heroes, and that is one of the reasons why the Blade project basically fell completely apart. I believe is that they don't want to write a black male hero and have us seeing a black male hero having power, and the same thing is going on with the Armor Wars movie with Don Cheadle. They just don't want us to see an image of a black man having power because they saw the impact of Luke Cage and Static Shock with audiences. Luke Cage, basically, to this day, is the only program on Netflix that broke its servers, and Static Shock was the #1 show from about 2001 to 2004, and basically, it's a crime we never got Static Shock action figures. But the reason why we didn't get them is because nobody likes to have the image of a black man elevated in their media. They don't like to have the image of a black man elevated in media of having power. And that's something I saw when I did the John Haynes Godbreaker book. People don't have a problem with a black character when they are in a white world, but when that black character starts to take power, they get upset. Moreover, when that black character starts to show dominance like Black Panther did in 2018, when Black Panther started to show that there was an audience for black fantasy characters and basically could sell merchandise because that first wave of Black Panther merchandise sold completely out. This is what many in companies like Disney are really uncomfortable about because they want the white male and the white female to be the face of their media, and when they start to see black characters starting to become popular, it makes them uncomfortable because, again, like Professor Black Truth has said, white supremacy is hypersensitive, and the media arm of white supremacy is hypersensitive. They don't like the idea of the image of a black man having power, and that's one of the reasons why they did Terrence Howard so dirty. And they did Terrence Howard dirty because he was getting paid more than Robert Downey Jr. He was a bigger performer than Robert Downey Jr. And they didn't like the idea of the white man having to follow behind a black man. So that's why Terrence Howard basically was kicked out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in what I believe one of the most racist ways and humiliating ways, because again, Terrence Howard basically was the first person they approached because, again, superhero movies wasn't doing that hot. No, we had dealt with flops like Catwoman, Blade Trinity, again, the Spider-Man 3, the Hulk, and Daredevil underperforming, and they needed a guy who would be a draw, so this is why they came to Terrence Howard, and Terrence Howard never really got his shot to be the star of a superhero movie like he was possibly promised. I mean, Terrence Howard was done dirty, and I again would believe that he deserves an opportunity to show what he could do because he has a great range and is a brilliant actor and was holding his own in scenes with Robert Downey Jr. and I believe doing better than Don Cheadle because Don Cheadle was a bit stiff as Jim Rhodes, whereas Terrence Howard was a bit more casual and laid back, similar to the way Rhodey is in the comics, because Rhodey is a chill dude who basically, again, is at the side of Tony Stark. And what I find to be a shame is we never got to see, a really good Rhodey outside of the first Iron Man movie because Don Cheadle's Rhodey he's just really stiff, and he's not this chill dude that is in the comics. I mean, if you read Rhodey in the Michelini-Layton runs or the Kamenetsky-Hopgood runs, he's a completely different character than what was presented in the MCU under Don Cheadle. And I really wish we could get that opportunity to see what Terrence Howard would do in the role of War Machine. But I would believe it'd be better to just call it Iron Man, the next generation or something like that. And again, fans would love that character because War Machine is a cool character. People like him. Now, I believe that he's just Iron Man with guns bolted on him. But the whole thing is that the character is a great character, and I basically believe that Terrence Howard could carry a movie and make it a huge hit, just like the first Iron Man was. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal or the Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. And if I know something about that subject, I'll make that video for you. Now, if you want to check out my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com for about $15, the same price it was on the 2022 Kickstarter, and you can get your own copy of that comic and see how I write comics. Now, I also have another comic I did called Esteem No Good Deed, which is available on Kindle for 99 cents, and you can pick it up in the Esteem series book, Esteem Blast from the Past. And you can also check out the books of the SJS Direct Universe, which feature a lot of black characters who are really cool. And you can check out the adventures of the man who rules the world, John Haynes, the CEO of Morris Phillips, in books like The Temptation of John Haynes and the John Haynes series. You can check out the adventures of Isis, the goddess next door, in the Isis series, and you can check out the Aspiring Angel in the Esteem series, and you can check out other books I have written, like the Goth Spinsterella trilogy, Spellbound, the legendary Mad Matilda, and Spinsterella, which feature a black goth. And you can also check out my black vampire novel, Eternal Night, or my black sorority novel, The Thetas, or my business novel, Recipe for Success. All of those books are available on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. They're also available at other online booksellers like Craft the Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes, Godbreaker in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this action-packed, all-new Esteem series adventure. Get your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.